Story 1. Companies, even multinational corporations, are held together with Scotch tape and legacy technology. Story 2. Rare earth minerals are relatively common. The problem is separating them from the ore. Story 3. I'm in the mental health field and shocked at how incompetent some therapists are. Story 4. I work at a large technology company. People think we are extremely data-driven, which is true in some respects. However, often decisions are made because someone wants a promotion or because a leader has a biased hunch not supported by the data. My hunch is that this is very common. Story 5. Many customers use electronic benefit transfer, food stamps, supplemental nutrition assistance program benefits, and other assistance programs. I work at a grocery store, and I could not tell you how many people need help paying for their food. It is incredibly common, but there is still a stigma around it that breaks my heart. People will try to hide the card and swipe as quickly as possible. I want to tell them they are the 10th person this hour to come through my line using electronic benefit transfer. It is okay. Life is hard and expensive. Story 6. Many people experience mental health struggles. While people often put on a brave face, they may be dealing with anxiety, depression, and other mental health conditions. Story 7. Having some kind of long-term medical condition or other health problem is common. Almost everyone will develop one at some point, even if it is well managed, in remission, or nearly invisible. It does not have to lead to visible disability. Story 8. Addiction can involve drugs, alcohol, or gambling. Years ago, I was called for jury duty and made the final selection round of 20 people in the courtroom. The judge gave details of a drug trafficking case and went around the room to ask potential jurors whether any of their experiences might cause a bias. I was shocked by how many admitted to having an addiction themselves or to having a family member affected. Of the 20 potential jurors, 10 had personal or family experience with addiction. Story 9. The diamond industry restricts supply to create the appearance of rarity. Emeralds and rubies are actually rarer. Story 10. Imposter syndrome, that feeling of not being good enough or of faking it, is surprisingly common. Even very successful people feel they do not deserve their achievements, but no one talks about it because they assume they are the only ones who feel that way. Story 11. People who do not want children often find that others act as if they are the only person in the world who made that choice. Story 12. Incompetent medical professionals. There are many people in the medical field who are in it only for the paycheck and who do only the minimum required, which often does not include acting in the patient's best interest. Story 13. There are people who have genuine good intentions and act with kindness. Not everyone is strictly out for themselves. While some are selfish, many others try to be good people and care about the broader human community. Story 14. People use illicit drugs. I don't mean smoking a little marijuana. I mean cocaine, ecstasy, ketamine, you name it. It's never who you would suspect. Story 15. Herpes. It is everywhere. I have avoided it for 48 years, and I intend to keep it that way. Story 16. Many school bullies continued their behavior into adulthood without learning to control it. Story 17. I work as a consultant for building accessibility. The pushback I get from people is often that disability only affects 1% of the population. In reality, it is closer to 20 to 25%. About 1 in 4 or 5 people have some form of disability. This is true worldwide, regardless of the country, and some people have multiple disabilities, including friends and family who provide care or support. Disability touches 40% of the population. Disability is much more common than people think. People with disabilities make up the largest minority group in the world. If you said 1 in 5 people for anything else, it would be considered a lot. For some reason, people do not see that ratio as enough to care about when the topic is disability. Story 18. From personal experience, people who think they are not alcoholics are alcoholics. Story 19. I did not have any friends, only a bunch of acquaintances. One day I asked several of my colleagues, "Who is your best friend?" They were really fumbling. Story 20. Thick facial hair in women. Spend enough time working in a hospital where women are too old or too sick to shave or wax, and you will see it. Story 21. Happy marriages. Divorce statistics are heavily skewed by people who have been divorced multiple times. Story 22. There are far more women who have been sexually assaulted and never said anything than most people would think. Story 23. Not feeling like a real adult when you are well into adulthood. Story 24. Anecdotally, intrauterine device complications feel common. The statistics make them sound rare, but when I got mine it seemed like every woman I knew who had one told me about it perforating her uterus. Then it happened to me, and even my obstetrician-gynecologist had a similar story and said she sees it all the time. I no longer trust intrauterine devices as much. Story 25. When I was a nerdy, self-conscious boy growing up in the minority community I was raised in, I always looked up to the cool kids. When I finally worked my way into their group, I realized they were just as uncool as I was. They had many of the same interests and the same anxieties. This pattern repeated in high school, college, and even in adulthood. I recently turned 30. A couple of years ago, I dated a skater girl whose friends were in their mid-20s and all skaters. While my friends and I were artists, these 20-somethings felt much cooler. Their art seemed more real and more fully formed. They did street graffiti and were constantly making new music, whereas my friends and I were maybe working on something here or there. They seemed so cool. One Pride weekend I hung out with them, and we sat there playing Cards Against Humanity, a game I had last played with my nerdy engineering friends in college. I realized cool people do not actually exist. From childhood to adulthood, I found how common it is that almost everyone is neurotic and self-conscious. Many enjoy the same things others call lame, and at the end of the day, no one is really cool. Story 26. My wife's father is a psychiatrist who works with people affected by pedophilia. That's why it's important to distinguish between pedophiles and pedophile predators. Story 27. Porn addiction is widespread. It seems uncommon to find someone who is not addicted. Story 28. In the United States, about 1 in 8 people is carrying a concealed firearm at any given time. For example, if there are 200 people in a store, about 25 of them may be carrying a gun. This proportion is substantially higher in conservative states. Except where firearms are expressly prohibited by law, multiple people in public places are likely carrying. Story 29. Homeless people. In the first year I was homeless, no one realized it. But then I began to notice many people in the same situation as me. They are the invisible crowd. They are everywhere, wearing fancy clothes, drinking coffee nonchalantly at your side, with their children, in a nice car, or walking their dog. We just pretend not to see the final stage, the ragged, dirty, visibly ill ones. Based on my experience, they represent at most 20% of the homeless people you encounter in a day. It is an epidemic. Story 30. As I get older, I realize many people are good at hiding the unusual things they like, and you never truly know someone. A man I knew who seemed ordinary turned out to be a furry. Story 31. It sounds obvious and silly, but death keeps happening. I recently installed an app that notifies me whenever someone in my town dies, and I am stunned by how often it happens. Story 32. Of the 5 women, my mother and her 4 daughters, I was the only one who never experienced rape. My mother's prior sexual assaults numbed her to the fact that my daughter had been molested while in her care, and she failed to recognize the urgency of responding to her distress. I expect this to increase exponentially under the incoming administration. Story 33. This question is being asked on this subreddit in several recent posts. Story 34. Accidentally defecating in your pants. Story 35. Open relationships and swinging. The reason we do not hear about them is that, if people are prudent, they keep them private. Once you are in the lifestyle, people seem to come out of the woodwork everywhere. Story 36. People's sexuality is more diverse than commonly believed. We often assume everyone is either straight or gay, but many people fall somewhere in between. Story 37. We are just winging it. Most people have no idea what they are supposed to be doing at least half the time. Story 38. Herpes is often stigmatized. Many people react strongly to type 2 as if it were adult cooties, yet many have had a cold sore at some point. Story 39. 1 in 7 adults has chronic kidney disease, and 90% do not know it. Story 40. Everyone has at least one weird kink that you cannot even imagine. Story 41. People doing blow, laughing my ass off. I have never done it and never will, because I can see how it can completely destroy someone's life. Over the past 5 years, and now at 22, I have realized how common it actually is. People always told me it was common, but I did not believe them until I saw it with my own eyes. Story 42. I'm surprised no one here has mentioned abuse, especially if it's not physical. Story 43. Racism is common among many people. Working with older generations makes you realize how racist they can be. They often make snide remarks about anything that is not part of their culture. Story 44. Many people are prediabetic. 9 out of 10 people fall into the prediabetic category, but without blood tests most would never find out. This applies at least in the United States. I am not sure about other countries. Story 45. A grim answer. Miscarriage. It is not nearly as rare as people expect. Story 46. Celibacy means that not everyone is getting married or having children. Story 47. Neurodevelopmental conditions such as autism and attention deficit hyperactivity disorder are often thought to be overdiagnosed, but they remain underdiagnosed. They are more common than previously believed, and many people go undiagnosed because of limited awareness and understanding. Story 48. Fraud, scams, lies, cheating, exploitation, and slavery are widespread. The biggest offenders are those holding high public and corporate office. The fact that many of them are revered says a lot about how sick our society is. Story 49. Bots are posting and commenting on Reddit. There is an astonishing number now, and many people do not seem to realize it because even obvious bots receive many sincere responses. I was recently asked by a bot on Reddit how to spot other bots. It is getting crazy. Story 50. Intrusive thoughts are much more common than people think, and therapists will say the same. Most people do not admit them because they carry a lot of shame. Story 51. Auditory hallucinations are experiences of hearing something that is not there. Story 52. Unsolved murders. The rate at which homicides are solved has steadily declined from the 1980s to the present. In the 1980s, about 70% of homicides were solved. Today, only about 47% are solved. There is a substantial chance that, if you were murdered today, no one would ever find your killer. Story 53. Abuse. Many victims do not realize they are being abused. They often rationalize the behavior, especially when a parent is emotionally abusive. Victims not recognizing the abuse is usually the answer to the question why they did not leave. Story 54. Long-term effects and health complications after coronavirus disease 2019 include stroke, autoimmune disease, and worsening of pre-existing conditions. Story 55. Female gamers. Gaming isn't just for boys. Treat them like fellow gamers, not as goddesses or objects. Story 56. I recently read that about 20% of all pregnancies end in miscarriage. Awful. Story 57. Women sexually assaulting boys. I look forward to women saying that this has never happened. Story 58. Siblings stealing money from a deceased parent's estate and defrauding one another. Story 59. Everything. If the odds of being struck by lightning and then winning the lottery are 1 in 100 million, then there are 82 people who have experienced both. Story 60. Triathlon and marathon participants soiling their pants during the event. Story 61. There is such a thing as functional alcoholics, but they don't function very well and are a drag on those around them. Story 62. Cocaine becomes very common in college and during your 20s. Story 63. Child abuse is alarming. 1 in 4 children are affected. Much of it is committed by parents, guardians, close relatives, and others. It disturbs me because I wonder what some people are like behind closed doors. Story 64. Attraction to minors exists, but most people who experience it are civilized enough to realize it is a remnant of obsolete caveman instincts and let the feeling come and go without acting on it. Those who follow that instinct are not a marginal group either. You only need to visit certain remote places without the cultural stigma, where it is considered normal. I learned this in a sociology course. I did not sleep well that night. Story 65. Places that are open on Christmas Day. Most people see it as a time when everything closes, but a surprising number of places remain open on December 25th. Story 66. Miscarriage occurs frequently, but few women openly discuss it. Story 67. The number of times people comment. This question is posted here nearly every day. Story 68. Age-related illnesses now appear earlier, with many young adults experiencing mental illness, cognitive decline, and early-onset dementia. Self-medication for mental illness has led to very poor hygiene. One might think we are in a global war. These observations come from the far end of the world, Sydney, Australia, an absolute dystopian hellhole. Story 69. People who watch any sport and think they would have been better than a professional athlete. Story 70. Cancer. 1 in 3 people will develop some form of cancer in their lifetime. Story 71. It is not that people think miscarriage does not happen often. It is a sensitive, hush-hush topic, so many people are unaware how common it is until it happens to them. The likelihood of miscarriage is approximately 33% in the first 3 to 4 weeks. Story 72. Cognitive biases. We all use them every day, naturally and unavoidably. They are fun to research. About 80% of the time they are helpful and important. About 20% of the time they are erroneous and misleading. Blessings to all today. Story 73. Being addicted to pornography is a serious issue. After randomly reading about how big a problem it is, I started noticing how often the signs appeared in people's stories about their awful partners. Story 74. Driving with cognitive impairment. Do they briefly lose their way in familiar places? Are they confused when driving in rain or at night? Do they frequently wait too long at stop signs? Story 75. Diamonds are made of carbon, and there is plenty of carbon on Earth. The main reason diamonds seem rare is a 20th century jewelry marketing campaign that made them appear precious, although they are essentially common. Story 76. Anxiety. Everyone who has it thinks they are all alone, but in reality nearly everyone experiences it, especially in the United States. Sexual assault. It seems almost every woman has a story about it. For a long time I thought that meant some of them were making it up, but now I think it is just that common. Story 77. People you consider close can be the most jealous in your life. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.